So it is the 30th of November, and in Ludlow now it's snowing. So I am such a batty old crow. I had it in my head that I definitely wanted to do these videos outside, and consequently I'm very cold now, but I won't be told. And actually, I don't know if you can hear it, there is a crow and a magpie shouting at me to say, go inside, you silly cow. But I'm not listening. I am here to provide a service in the snow. So Katerina asked me a few very difficult questions, but I think probably the most important one I'll answer today is this one about sustainability. She says, where's my page? She says there's so much conflicting information about overusing and exploitation of workers and against generating income for poor economies. Can you put your slant on what the truth of the situation is? And I think the answer to that, Katerina, is probably not. I will try, but I'm not a politician. I'm no politician of any sort, and I'm certainly not an economist, but I do try to keep fairly well informed, because I do think that the sustainability needs to be built into every aromatherapist's business. So I will tell you some facts that I've gathered and see if it can make a difference. Do you like my Cruella de Vil look, by the way? It's not helping, it's still cold. Right, so I'm going to use my book because I can't do this without notes. So in 2015, the global aromatherapy economy was valued at $6 billion. So that's global. But by 2022, in the US alone, it's expected to peak at $11.19 billion. It's extraordinary, isn't it? And by 2015, it was 2.5 billion in Europe, but it looks like our market over here is reaching market saturation, but yours in America has a long way to go. And they put that down to, you know, we have double incomes now, there's more disposable income to spend, but also we're more aware of what the oils can do. There is better marketing from, well, I say people like me, but people like doTERRA and Junglingen are putting the words out there. You know, everybody's talking about essential oils, so people know more about it, so they will spend more on it. But by 2026, the global aromatherapy industry is going to be valued at $8 billion. That's a prediction. So so that's extraordinary, isn't it? So obviously there's a disparity between this 11.19 US dollars in 2022, but only 8 billion in aromatherapy in 2026, and that's obviously because not all the essential oils go to aromatherapy. They go to the fragrance industry, they go to the flavouring industry, some go to medicine, yeah, just lots of different places. So it's not all aromatherapy, but obviously that's a significant factor. And in 2014, I remember them saying that 1% of the world's farmable land was given over to essential oils. Now then, that made me feel sick. So, you know, we were not even close to what we're going to be. So that's going to be vast. And when people are starving, that appalls me, really. It really does. So that's my words on that. And of course we need to think about there are oils that are just being farmed to destruction, and they're not necessarily for essential oils either. So things like argawood or sandalwood mysore or rosewood, they were partly responsible, but not wholly. You know, they were used for temples, they were used for furniture, they were used for a variety of different things. But the challenge is still there. There's just not enough for our children now. So restrictions have to be put in place to protect them. It's not just about our children, it's about the animals that live amongst them, it's about the impact that they have on the environment generally. So they have to be protected. So really you shouldn't be buying sandalwood Mysore from India. You shouldn't be buying rosewood from Peru. You shouldn't be using natural agarwood. Now, I have to say, there are good replacements in place. I have a lovely supplier of agarwood that they've been grown in Malaysia, and they use a herbal irritant to inject into young trees, and they can get oil from them from when they're about 6 to 10 years old. Now that's very different from natural agarwood, which happens instantly. It's a parasite that causes it, or being struck by lightning or something like that, and so they can be very, very old trees, and they're very difficult to replace. Now, using these new ones, they might be inferior, although I have to say some of the clinical studies say that they are better. They're probably inferior in some ways to the natural, but I don't care, really. I think that we shouldn't be using the real ones, and I think that the replacements are just as good. So that's, you need to be looking for people who can supply you with good replacements. We're talking about rosewood oil. I don't really like getting in these debates because I don't like to be the person that says it, but in September of this year, Young Living were fined an awful lot of money for illegally importing and trading rosewood oil. I think it was, well, let's look at the thing. So they broke the Lacey Act and the Endangered Species Act and were fined $760,000 American dollars. So that was $500,000 in fines. They were asked to pay $135,000 in restitution, and $125,000 went into community services as a payment for protection of conservation species. And so Peruvian law prohibits, I'll read it. Peruvian law prohibits unauthorized harvest and transportation of timber. So they didn't get a CITES permit or authorization from the government. And between 2010 and 2014, they exported approximately 86 tons of rosewood intended for distillation and importation into the United States. And it was in complete violation of Peruvian law. And then also in a very short period of time, really, November 2014 to January 2016, they also procured 1,100 or 1,100 kilos of oil with a company without doing due diligence of where they'd come from. And it was found that Young Living had no internal compliance policies of any description. They didn't have any formal procedures, there was no training in place, and so there was no review system, so that this may have been deliberate right the way through the company. It's impossible to tell whether it was a few or it was, a deliberate thing. But either way, 86 tons of rosewood from a plant that's really, it's rare now, is appalling. Now, I have to say, I kind of have to take a small amount of responsibility in that I do list rosewood in my free book. I cite it, if I remember rightly, I'm only guessing that I do, but it is I learnt it when I was training that it's the best oil for exam stress, and that is the case. Now I would say no, we're not using rosewood, we would use vetiver and yuzu, and that would be just as good. So I have to take some responsibility, because people are going out there and saying, well, Right, she says use rosewood. If people weren't buying rosewood, then Young Living wouldn't be so greedy as to behave in this manner. So I have to take some responsibility, as does everybody who has a bottle of rose oil in their drawer. What I will say is my bottle of rose oil is about 14 years old and probably has no efficacy of any description at all. But you know, I haven't bought one for a long time, but it was a really stupid thing for me to write in my book, actually, so I have to take some responsibility for that. Under the same fine, they were also fined for importing spikenard in December 2015. They exported spikenard over here to the UK, and then another company exported it over to America, and they didn't get a CITES permit, but then got the CITES permit retrospectively, so that they dodged most of the paperwork for it. So again, just not very good, really. But I mean, spikenard in particular is close to my heart, because when I went to Beijing to lecture, we went for this most beautiful meal, and just really incredible meal, and amazing entertainment of singers and dancers and stuff. And we played host to some very small children from an orphanage, and they were dressed in all their traditional dress, and they were cherubic, just beautiful children, but they had quite injured skin, and the reason for that was they live so high up in the Himalayas in Nepal that there's no protection from the sun, and so they had been hideously burned. And incidentally, this orphanage is sponsored by the IFA, by the International Federation of Aromatherapists, and all of their fundraising goes to this particular orphanage. And there was a couple of English people who were, I can't really remember how they were affiliated, I think they were just volunteers that went over there, but they were explaining to me that these children went to this orphanage. It was a school, but they weren't actually officially orphans. They did have parents, but the parents couldn't live at home. They had to go out and collect plants. So it was only when I started writing the spikenard book that I started to understand the truth of what that meant. So a quarter of the people in Nepal are plant hunters. So there is so much fauna and beautiful medicinal plants that are traded out of the country around the world, that everybody earns a bit of cash off going and collecting these amazing plants, and spikenard is one of them. So bear in mind when you're using your bottle of spikenard and you're putting it in the bath just because you've had a bit of a rubbish day and, you know, just fancy just chilling, those children don't have their parents at home because so that you can have that bath, and so that cost is incredibly high, isn't it? It's incredibly high. And Young Living decided to just go past that, because actually spikenard has to be distilled into an essential oil in Nepal. I'm saying Nepal, Tibet. I'm saying it's Tibet. Sorry. It has to be distilled there before it comes out of the country. And that's right, that's good, because that means that there's more jobs for them. Now, is it exploitation because they don't get minimum wage? It's difficult to say. If there's no minimum wage in the country and their living rates are low, then we don't know. Is it exploitation? What I can say is minimum wage is putting a huge strain and putting essential oil prices up in other parts of the world. So it's very, very difficult, isn't it? Vetiver is a very, very interesting oil from that point of view, and I do talk about it in my book, that after there was I can't remember if it was an earthquake or a hurricane now, but after there was destruction from some natural disaster in Haiti, the fragrance industry stepped in and to try and help. So on Haiti, there's just, it's so much vetiver grows, and they, the roots plunge down, as much as 8 meters right down into the earth, and it's beautiful, beautiful fragrance, but it's incredibly good medicine for grounding somebody and calming them and stabilizing them. So it's an important oil. Now the people, it's actually unusual, the vetiver on Haiti, because people do recognize how valuable it is, whereas the people in Tibet and Nepal don't really recognize how valuable spikenard is. They just know they can get some money for collecting it. They don't understand how treasured it is around the rest of the world's trade. But they are fully aware that this is kind of their legacy, but they call it, it's like their pension. So, they know if they let their bit of vetiver grow and grow and grow, they'll be able to earn a lot of money off it. But if, they have a big expense from for a medical bill or something like that, then up it comes. It gets dug up, and that's the way that they pay their bills. So, I mean, it might seem altruistic that there was this fair trade agreement in place, and it means that they buy most of their vetiver oil from Haiti, and in return, then the Haitians have to leave the vetiver roots in the ground longer, so that they have a better chance to mature. So there's better essential oil yield and a better quality of oil. They also have to store it carefully, but more importantly, the way that the roots grow is it's incredible for anchoring the soil. So in places like India and places like that, it's used to protect against soil erosion, and it's fantastic for making barriers along the coastlines, so that if there's loads and loads of construction, the rubbish doesn't go from the construction into the sea and ruin the coral reefs. So I mean, it's really important oil, but if you pull vetiver up, then you obviously have to bring a lot of soil up with it. And I would recommend having a look on YouTube. There are videos that have been done, and it's incredible to see the roots. So this part of this fair trade agreement is they have to shake off a lot of the soil, and they have to protect against this soil erosion, and also they have to pay their workers a certain amount of money. Now, reviews showed that there were plenty of people in the field not being paid the right amount of money, but when all said and done, it's a good agreement that makes sure that we have the best oil, and in return they have roads built and they have their schools built, and there's lots of investment in it. And most of the oil is bought from Haiti, which is wonderful for Haiti, but it's not so great for the places like Reunion and places like that who did supply huge amounts of oil but can't compete now. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I mean, not for a second am I running that agreement down, because I think it's fantastic. But Isaac Newton said, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And, that's what you're going to get. There's always two sides for every story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. So, which is why I say I can't really say to you too much about saying, oh, this is sustainability. What I can say is, as a consumer, you have enormous power. So somebody like me needs my hand slapped for putting rosewood in a book, for a start off, but also you need to be thinking, right, well, what are they doing for sustainability? Where are their protocols? And people who are wild harvesting, or smaller producers, they're better at this, I have to say. I mean, it's very clearly proven in September of this 2017, so that's this year. Young Living didn't have it in place. So, you have power. And likewise, please bear in mind that the essential oils are the resource-rich items. The amount of energy that goes into creating an essential oil is phenomenal. So we're talking about the amount of plant matter. We talk about that in another video. Sort of tens of thousands of leaves for a drop of oil in some instances, but also fossil fuels to be able to fuel the stills, the transport costs around the world, and it's an incredible amount. So are you using your essential oils carefully enough? Are you going around the house saying, I'm going to clean everything going with spikenard? Or, you know, that's wasteful. It's wasteful of people's lives that have put it in there. I mean, I would be the first one to say to you that, you know, if I've got a bottle of lemon oil coming to the end of its life, it'll get used for cleaning, but I don't buy essentials just for cleaning. And I think unless you've got a damn good reason to do that, you need to be thinking about ones that produce plenty of oil naturally, so things like clove or citrus oils, not the precious stuff. Not, you know, and don't just drink it, for goodness sake, for all the safety things of ingestion. What a waste, really, what a waste. And I mean, I have to say, I had a ghostwriting client who must have thought that steam was coming out of my ears because he wanted me to build in cooking with essentials. I said, absolutely not doing that. Not just from a safety point of view, but if you want to have the effects of rosemary in your dinner, eat some rosemary. If you want to eat lemon, have a lemon. Don't use the essential oils. So there's your sustainability. I'm sure there are many other aspects, but there's a bit for you to think about. I hope that helps, Katerina. I'm guessing maybe there's an essay somewhere happening, so hopefully I've been able to influence that in a positive way. And Katerina, as I've said, I'm sending you my book, so please send me your details. And just in case nobody's seen, this is my new book, and that's what Katerina's getting to thank her for the stress she's given me for these very difficult questions.